Okay, multi-dimensional arrays for some people are really challenging. And after discussing this with so many students for so many years, I've come to realize that the notion of a multi-dimensional array actually is pretty easy for most people. It's just simply the way in which we represent it in computers can sometimes get a little confusing. So what I have here is my handy dandy chalkboard again, and let's go ahead and first of all let's talk about the array that we do have in terms of a single dimension. Okay, so we have our handy dandy array right here, and it has literally a whole bunch of cells, right? So we'll divide that, divide that, divide that, there and there. Don't you just love my artwork? I got to figure out this tablet a little bit better yet. So in our arrays we have our position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in this case. So we have 7 different positions for our array, and we can store whatever data that we want into. And it is a single dimension array. If I want to, I can create a second array, like a parallel array, like we discussed earlier. And I could call it array B, okay, if I want to. Or I can think of this as an array of arrays, okay? So now I have a big array, which in fact is this critter up here, B. B is an array that actually is better to put this down this way. B holds arrays. It holds this array here, and then it holds this array, and then it holds the next array of arrays, and so on and so forth. And in this case, because of the nature of it, we should do everything we can to make sure that all of these arrays, the individual arrays that we're seeing through here, okay, these guys, they need to be the same size. It makes it much easier to get through what's going on in this thing if they're the same size. Although with lists in Python, you can get away with not doing that, okay? Not a good move. A real classic example of an array of arrays is a game board, right? I can see, I haven't really spent a lot of time playing around with this tablet, but I can see that in time I could actually get fairly good at this thing, considering I can't draw nearly this well with my mouse, okay? So as you can see, I'm turning this thing into one of the scariest looking chessboards around. The point is we have a whole bunch of rows and we have a bunch of columns. So if we can divide things up into rows and columns, we're good to go. And herein is the key, or therein is the key. If we think of these things as rows and we think of those things as columns, then when it comes time to working with them in a computing program, it is way easier to do so. So let's go ahead, and we won't save that. Quit Photoshop, and we'll go back to our arrays, our multi-dimensional arrays, and we'll do it all in Python. Grab a hold of this like so, and we'll say that my array is going to be equal to, and remember it's a list, right? But we're not going to think of it quite as a list here, just to keep our head in the game. One bracket that opens, one bracket that closes is the form of an array. That means that if we have another bracket that opens and a second bracket that closes, we're talking about yet another array. In other words, an array within an array. And in truth, if I do 1 comma 2 and call this good, I have already created an array within an array. It's a little problematic in terms of understanding what's going on here, but it is acceptable. All right, put a comma after that because I have created one of the arrays. Here's one array. I create my second array. We'll say open bracket 3 comma 4, okay, and so on and so forth. And what I can do, I think maybe just to make things a little bit easier to comprehend, I'm just going to go 1 comma 1, and here I'm going to go 2 comma 2. I have 2 elements in my little array. Right now it's a 2 by 2 array, right? And if I do a comma again, I can do 3 comma 3, okay? And I have myself an array of 3 arrays. In other words, this dimension, this array is maybe a 2 by 3 array, or is it a 3 by 2? We'll explore that just a little bit more, okay? What I can say is that, in fact is, let me do this. Let me bring up idle so that we can get immediate results from all of this as we tinker around. Maybe idle will come up, maybe it won't. Where is it? Ah, there it is. All right, so here comes idle. We'll bring it into the picture. Before I do that, though, I'll copy this since I went through the trouble to type it. Grab a hold of idle, bring it in here like so, and I'll say Control V, and there we are. So if I type in my array, first thing we find is that it did, in fact, accept it. Okay, so if I go my array 0, what that's going to do is that's going to grab all of the elements that are in this position. So each one of these guys, as you can see from my array's point of view, what I have here, since it's a 1 comma 1, I grabbed row 1, didn't I? And if I want to grab row 2, I can say my array 1, like so. So this will grab the second row of my array, and see how it prints it out? So I can think of maybe the first element is a row and the second element is a column. Let's find out. Let's do my array, and I will say, well, now we can't really tell because the rows and the columns are going to be about the same. Oh no, let's go ahead. I'll go my array row 1 and column 0. If that's how it's thinking of it, then it should give us row 1 column 0 should be maybe that one or that one there. Let's see what happens. And it says 2. So my array, yes, this is the row 2, which is right here, and then column 0, which is the 2. So the first element that we see here, we consider it as being a row, and the second element that we see, we consider as being a column. Okay, so I don't know how long this guy has been silent or paused or whatever, but I can always clip it out, I guess, if it's been a real long time. All right, so let's say that I want to print every row that's in my array. Okay, so I have my array just as we set it up before, and I'll just go ahead and give a little more space there so it's easier to see what's going on. 1, 2, 3 different rows, and 0 in positions 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so I'm going to find the length of my array, which is this critter right here, and remember, this is actually holding an array of arrays, right? Each element within my array is, in fact, an array. So I'm going to find out what the length of this critter is, which means it should be returning back 1, 2, 3 elements. All right, so let's go ahead and run this, and sure enough, I have my 3 rows. So now, if I want to go ahead and print each individual element, I'm going to have to use what's called a nested loop to pull that off. And that's one of the reasons we discussed nested loops before. What I'm going to have in here is for J in range, length, my array, To which somebody's saying, well, wait a minute, Dave, you already took the length of my array, and that's not going to quite work because the individual arrays are not 3 units long, and that's absolutely right. So what I will do, since I know that the first position of my array is itself an array of the correct length, then I will just grab it, just like that. And I'll pop in my colon, and we'll tab that in, and we'll add to this so that we're picking up the columns as well. Okay, so this will be J. And if I haven't made any real bad errors, when I click on this, then there it is, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So it definitely worked really, really well for us in terms of getting all of the values out of our rows and our columns. When we align things in the form of rows and columns, we also say that we're aligning them as a table, and we also say that they can be also considered a matrix.